Welcome to the next broadcast of On Higher Ground, Ambassadors of Change and Transformation. Here, our audience can meet extraordinary people who specialize in changing lives, of showing we flawed human beings how to modify our beliefs, discover our real power, alter our ineffective ways of thinking, and supercharge our motivation. In their work, they aspire, with our help, to enable us to discover our true mission, discern our most sacred dreams, and get on track for the lives we were born to live. These ambassadors of change have often been brought to their vocation by having to face extraordinary situations, great personal challenges, and intensive self-scrutiny before they can bring us to the higher ground where we deserve to be. I noticed, though, this person we are about to interview, Marcus Hart, had experience as a speaker. He had a podcast that specifically was devoted to assisting listeners in their journey to transformation. So I thought it perfectly appropriate to bring him on this program. And he has a kind of important story about his personal transformation, which led to his actual calling. So, to start off with, hi.
Hi, Johnny. How you doing?
I'm doing good. I was really excited when I saw the way you put your LinkedIn profile together because it was very much concerned with transformation. And I think transformation is what this world needs now. We need people to help other people on their journey. That's why I started this podcast was started, 6 or 8 months ago. I was looking to deal with people who could create change that was beneficial to other people and sort of give a sort of a broad view of the many types of transformation that are available. Yours is very basic, I think.
Yes, absolutely.
You're dealing with people's personal sense of mission, I would say.
Yes.
Why don't you elaborate a little bit more on kind of transformation and techniques that you might be involved with?
Okay. Yeah, and by calling it basic, it is pretty straightforward. It does give a more general overview to what the transformation journey entails in terms of different pivotal periods we all must face and come across, because all of us have these different changes in life, and then eventually once we move into what we are passionate about, what we have called into, there's going to be different pivotal points and different phases in which we're going to undergo in those callings and different purposes that we are involved in as well. So I tend to follow behind both that Gandhi and that Michael Jordan transformation stories. Whereas like Gandhi, when he was thrown off a train, because he was colored, he had a big transformational period there. And then Michael Jordan, when he was cut from the high school varsity team, as a freshman, everything changed for him from there, and he became the greatest of all time. So both of these characters, they had pivotal moments, that propelled them forward in a transformational journey. But it didn't stop there. They still had different periods where they had to make a choice in life, and these different choices we are faced with and that we have are very important, but how do you make these choices? How do you exercise your free will? How do you, be able to tap into side of, what's inside of you, if you don't even know, how to do that, if you don't know thyself, I say, you have to look higher than yourself and, not so much what's in front of you with your eyes and with the rest of your senses. So we look at the we look at life transformation in that sense, and we look at business transformation in that sense too, and we help the listeners and the followers of the podcast in that sense. And oftentimes I bring in my own personal story as well when there's no guests.
Well, one of the things that I know is that there's a word in Greek called kairos, which is in the New Testament. It means basically it's time. But it means also, in other words, you can talk about time as being chaotic. This is how some theologians would look at it. But the word itself, in ancient Greek, in Koine Greek, is kairos, which means both opportunity and crisis. And there's strangely a similar word in Chinese that has two meanings like that. So, in other words, there's time by the clock, and there's time by sort of those pivotal points that you're talking about. That demands a certain kind of attention because they're kind of more under the control of a higher power. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
And so sometimes the things that that really seem bad, if you look at them in the right way, they can turn into a tremendous opportunity for doing something. You can be rejected from the basketball team or whatever sport you're on and decide to be better, or you can just go ahead and start playing video games. So now I think that you've got a really interesting story. And first of all, tell us how, you have an interesting, say, entry point into this world. And then of course, you lived with your family until you left for to go into the National Guard. So tell us a little bit about your birth and what it was like growing up in your family.
Very early on, when I was born, I died at birth. Now, as it was told to me, I died right in the womb of, I suffocated as I was coming out of the womb and entering into this world. And my mom died as well. Right on the birthing table, and they took us into emergency C-section, and they pulled me right out, and they brought me back to life. So very traumatic entry indeed it was. And then following into the rest of that period in time, we grew up. We wasn't very well off. We grew up in poverty. Grew up in the projects here in Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
Yeah.
And so we here in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and as I turned 9 years old, I was sexually abused by another young child in the neighborhood. So that was my first instance of being exposed to something, some form of abuse. And following after that, not to mention my dad was not around. He was in and out of prison for the first part of my life. And at the age of 13, my mom, she sustained a back injury that took her off the job, and so we were facing some real hard times during that particular period when I was 13. So I took up my first job at the age of 13 at the Milwaukee County Stadium as a groundskeeper for the Milwaukee Brewers, and that was quite the experience as well. I had to take on some independence at a very young age, and then my dad returned back into my life when he was finally released from prison, and my mom decided to send me over to live with him. And he became very hard on me. He was very strict, very aggressive in his discipline. He was verbally abusive. He was also physically abusive as well. And in the midst of teetering back between his house and back to my mom was staying with my grandmother, and my grandmother was married to someone, and there was an experience in that particular household where I was sexually assaulted by an older teenage female. And furthermore, as life went on, I decided, as I was being bullied through school as well, throughout high school, being bullied, I decided that I wanted to get out. I wanted to get out of the neighborhood I was in. I wanted to get out of my father's house. I wanted to also establish a plan for my life too as well. I didn't really know what I wanted to do for college. I didn't want to know what I wanted to be. But there was a slip that showed up at my door about the National Guard.
Mm-hmm.
And I was 17 at that time. So I decided that I would enlist into the military, and that'll be my way to at least get away, and and at least start working on what I wanted to be, and have a way to pay for college if I decided to go to college. So I left out, and went to boot camp that summer while I was a junior. After my junior year. And then I came back and finished high school. I had to finish high school and summer school because I was kicked out of school. so
why were you kicked out of school?
I became a very angry kid. When when I came back from basic training, I felt like a real badass, so, I'm just going to say straightforward. I feel like a real badass and, but, like the bullying didn't stop, so the bullying didn't really stop, when I came back, I had kids, making fun of me and, so I got into a real huge rage, while at school and I got into a fight and there was some destruction of property at the high school I was at, and they decided like, hey, you need to either voluntarily leave the school or we're going to expel you. So I chose the latter, and I lost some credits along the way, and so I had to finish in summer school that year because I was a half a credit short of graduating. And then after that, I returned back and finished the rest of my training.
During that time in high school and then going, to boot camp and up to that point that you're at, what would you say your state of mind was like? Were you depressed? Were you angry all the time? What was it like? Did you have important dreams, important hopes? What was it like to be you at that time?
During that time, I felt like I rather, just die than be here, because I feel like I was being punished, but there would be these profound moments that would occur through my teenage life and while I was in middle school too, and even I can even think back to when I was younger, when I was in elementary, I have these people that that have just pop in my life, that was phenomenal. That would just encourage me to keep moving forward, and and that that I have potential, and that there's that I'm a bright kid, and just to stay encouraged, and things like that really stuck in my head, and and it was always. I didn't really, although I was being took to church every Sunday, I heard the message, but I really didn't really hear the message, so, oftentimes I would catch hold to a message and it would uplift me. But, outside of that, it was really, really great people, great mentors who will come along and keep me encouraged and keep me from, moving forward with, making that full exit out of this life.
We're going to get into a little bit what happened when you got out of your training and actually went into war. We'll be right back. My company, New Galaxy Enterprises, is a California corporation specializing in the creation of media and promotional content. We are focused on original, innovative projects that are good for humanity. These projects could be nonfiction books or novels, fictional screenplays or documentary content, websites and website content, commercial advertising content for print, audio, or video products on the internet, television, or radio, musical scores for advertising, television, or film, video, audio editing, etc. We want to promote products and projects that support the environment, encourage a healthy experience in living, developing, nurturing, and useful technology, and offering platforms for positive, socially constructive entertainment or informative, transformative media. Our experience in creating a variety of products like this is rather vast, and we offer client-based and collaborative products, as well as the opportunity of active investors to join us in the creation and promotion of proprietary products, some of which are in latter stages of development. For more information, go to www.newgalaxyenterprises.com. That's www.newgalaxyenterprises.com. If you're interested in talking to us, just fill out the contact sheet and we will get back with you.
Boots in Manhattan is a coming-of-age novel by Ray Boylan and Johnny Bluestar. It is about a young Tom Boots Raymond who grows up in New York in the 1940s, who was a member of a street gang.
My friends and I were about to start our own game of stickball when Rabbit Lacey, the head of the Rattlers, came up to us and tried to move in on our game. We were called Dwarves, the youngest members of this stupid gang.
Hey, Kevin, I need you to get some gloves and some stuff I left at my place.
No, this is our game.
Hey, are you my good little dwarf or what?
You've been calling me a dwarf since I was 6. We're not your personal slaves, pal.
Hey, what is this? A dwarf rebellion? All right, big guy, we ditched the dwarf thing. We make you guys regular rattlers.
No, it's too late.
He looked at Jay and me. We looked away. Rabbit was now angry, and he pushed Kevin hard with the palms of his hand. Kevin tried to ram him in the stomach, but he stepped aside, throwing Kevin into the curb where he fell to the ground, bleeding profusely at the knee. Still, he managed to get up.
My street.
Kevin shouted at Rabbit, pointing at him with an angry index finger.
Find out more by Googling Boots in Manhattan, a 1940s coming-of-age novel, part 1 of the novel series The Foot Soldier by Ray Boylan and Johnny Bluestar. Google with the words Boots in Manhattan, Ray Johnny Kindle. That's Boots in Manhattan, Ray Johnny Kindle.
Here's a song by the talented Stephanie Slevin speaking about the nature of fate. It's called What Comes Around.
Say what goes around comes right back around, but that's not true for me. They say what goes around comes right back around, and that it comes in threes. Please bring me rest, bring me some peace. Please knock on my door, and I promise I'll ask for nothing forever, evermore. Rise up from the darkness and step into the light. Close your eyes, embrace me, feel tomorrow's end of night. Ask me for forgiveness, and I will see it done. I know you think that all is lost, and the battle they have won. You do not see so clearly, you're blinded by the dark. Have I not shown you I am here, and for you to leave your mark, and for you to leave your mark? What goes around comes around, comes around. Say what goes around comes right back around, but that's not true for me. They say what goes around comes right back around, and that it comes in threes. You think I didn't love you and I left you alone, but the first step had to come for you to stand up on your own. Need not sit and tremble, free your mind from worry. For did I not appear to you and tell you I am sorry? Need not sit and tremble and weep upon the stair. Just put your hands together now, and I will answer every prayer. I will answer every prayer. What goes around comes around. Say what goes around. Say what goes around. Comes around.
So after high school, you entered the National Guard and began training. And that kind of training in the armed forces can become somewhat transformatory itself. And then at some point, you became a participant in the Second Gulf War. And the war started before you enlisted?
Deployment, to the war, it didn't come right away. So I had about 1 year between going overseas in support of the war and being at home. But even before the deployment, there was obviously some change in me because, I still had to, participate in drills. And, so I had to straddle between being the soldier and a civilian. And, there was still this anger that was starting to build within me. There was a bunch of resentment. There was a bunch of just things that were just carried over in training, waiting to be unleashed. And I just didn't know what it was. And once I was deployed, I found out real quick what that training was preparing me for. So I was deployed later that year, the year later, after, obviously 1 year of really, really trying to figure out what this anger was, what this hidden thing is I don't understand about myself, and really all of this resentment building up. So once I hit boots on ground, it was a total shocker to be somewhere totally different. But even before hitting boots on ground, there was some things I went through during the mobilization process, because I seen many people go through their own transformations. So because there was a lot of people that were scared, a lot of people that was fearful. I myself personally, I couldn't wait to go, and I didn't know where that was coming from. But there was a lot of people who really went through different things during the transformation, and a lot of them took, in my opinion, they took their emotions out in a different way instead of just holding them in and taking them overseas with them and then releasing it on their job and through their job, if that makes any sense. But furthermore, though, while going through the training the training process for the deployment itself, there was periods where I was having run-ins with authority figures, with many of my higher ups, and again, it was from some of that anger. So I was, I saw my father, in the faces of a lot of these authority figures, and so once we overseas, I believe that's why I was relieved, because then I felt like at least these guys will leave me alone, and I'll be able to focus on my job and do my job.
What was your job? I mean, were you in combat?
Well, my job, I was a supply clerk. I was responsible. I was a supply clerk, and I was working around mostly mechanics and the maintenance department. That'd be the civilian understanding of it. And I was responsible for dispatching the vehicles to be able to go on convoys to escort the trucks. Oftentimes, I did some supply runs myself to go pick up supplies on my own and come back to the forward operating base. But I was the last person that each soldier saw, and the first person they saw when they returned back. And the biggest shocker that happened for me when we first got there, in the first week, we lost our guys, 3 of our guys, in a roadside bomb, due to a roadside bomb. And I remember very clearly telling those guys that everything was going to be okay, and they died. And I had to be the one to inventory the truck. The truck was full of blood, and it was just a total mess. And that locked in my brain and gave me nightmares for the rest of the time I was there. And that didn't stop happening, because it happened again. And then my very own experience was, we were driving back into the forward operating base, and I heard a loud boom. It didn't hit my truck, but I heard it. And it sounded like it was very near my truck, and it really shook me, because I thought I had died, because I was sleeping. I had dozed off. I had allowed myself to doze off, and it woke me and it shook me.
Wow.
And that was the first time I was really scared while I was over there.
How'd you get along with the other men?
There was periods, where I wasn't getting along with people, and then there was times where, as time went by, I got very, very close with people, and people respected me. It was a mutual respect built, because people started to see that I really cared about what I did, especially after my injury. So my neck injury, I was one day, I was inventorying some Humvee tires, and I took those Humvee tires, I was rolling them a shelf, and the Humvee tire, one of the last Humvee tire I had racked up on the shelf, came back and almost decapitated my head, So and it knocked me clean out, knocked me unconscious, and it gave me nerve damage in my neck, for the rest of the time I was there, they put me on light duty, but I still had to wear helmet, still had to wear all the gear, and I still had to do my job despite that.
So that was that was pretty traumatic to have to endure a war with that kind of personal pain, right?
Yes.
At that time, did you start to have, I know that down the line, you started to have certain, I guess you'd say PTSD symptoms, right?
Yes.
Did that happen while you were still in the National Guard, or was that later?
The neck injury?
Did you start having the symptoms when you were there in the National Guard, or did it happen after you left?
Yeah, the nightmare started while I was there, and also there were the anger as well, and the anxiety. And then when I came back, it just heightened, along with the depression. The depression heightened, the suicidal thoughts. There were times where I was feeling homicidal at times too when I came back. For expound on that, I just didn't feel safe after being stuck on a forward operating base, and you have people to protect you that you start developing a trust with. That's guarding every entrance. Then you come back and you don't have that anymore. You don't trust anybody. And then every vehicle you see, you get reminded of seeing the blood from the vehicle that was blown up. And so I dreamed about that constantly, and even my own injury, I had constant reminders of just being frustrated with that, and because I didn't receive treatment right away for that. I didn't receive adequate treatment when I was overseas. So I was dealing with that along with some migraines, constant migraines, and so I was very depressed about that. And nothing felt the same. Nothing felt the same. I couldn't get into a routine because I didn't have no one to wake me. I didn't have no schedule, so I didn't have I didn't know what time to wake up, what time to go back to sleep. I didn't know what I was supposed to do. Although I had a job when I got deployed, I tried to return back to the job. I couldn't perform it. So that made the anger grow even more. Just with the job, frustration with the job, frustration with relationships, and so there was a lot of irritation, snapping off at people for minor things, because I just didn't so just this whole so I had lost myself completely.
I know, because in my life there was a long period of time where I was always angry. Not inspired by the same kind of trauma you experienced, but it had to do with many different factors. But it was only about 5 years ago that I sort of made a transformation. It was similar to the kind of transformation you were talking about, spiritual transformation. But regardless of the source of anger, being angry all the time is not funny. Putting aside anything else, it makes your whole life an orgy of potential vindication through negativity or violence.
Yes.
So now we're going out for a few minutes, then we'll come back and continue our discussion. This is Johnny Bluestar, CEO of New Galaxy Enterprises, a media content development company. If you're an author and want your novel adapted to the screen or to the new high-quality TV series developed by Amazon, Hulu, and Netflix, for example, I probably can help. My company, New Galaxy Enterprises, is a media content company, and I've worked on a number of adaptations, including a dramatic version of ventriloquist Paul Winchell's autobiography, an adaptation of a novel co-authored by myself and a Korean War veteran, an historical account of the Mexican art revolution, a science fiction screenplay based on a fictional novel account of fallen angels, and many other proprietary and client-based projects. We want our projects to be with high-quality potential and positive intent. To learn more about New Galaxy, see samples of our work, or talk to us about your project, please go to www.newgalaxyenterprises.com and fill out the contact form. This song was the first song composer Edgar Ahrens and I created for master songstress Patricia Welch. It is speaking about the eternality of real love, and it's called Love Never Withers.
Its great shrieks make me cry. I remember the joyous gleam that it stole from my eyes. I remember that day when the wind swept away life's dear comfort and warmth on that bitter autumn day. Maple leaves curl and quiver and flail in the air. Their rude act of dying paints red brown everywhere. But I know harsh enchantment can't turn real love astray, because love never withers. Love never withers. Love never withers away. The wooden horses coyly pranced as we slid through the night to the carousel's ruckus dance, far from destiny's light. Silly children we played, but forgot how to pray. We were trapped in ourselves, and we couldn't get away. Memory haunts me in the shadows of sleep. The promise we buried, we swore we would keep. A passion that lives in the world without end. My love, we can't fail this promise again, again. Maple leaves curl and quiver and flame in the air. Their rude act of dying paints red brown everywhere. But I know harsh enchantment can't turn real love astray, because love never withers. Love never withers. Love never withers away.
Welcome back. We're back with Marcus Hart, a transformational podcaster, a speaker, and someone I think you're going to be happy to know by the end of these shows, because Marcus has gone through the things that have changed him in such a way that he can truly be helpful to people. And I know this because I've read his book and I've had now in-depth discussion. And I particularly started to do these type of programs because I wanted to introduce our audience to different approaches to transformation that really are important. And in terms of what we're about to hear, I would say this is kind of core and essential type of transformation that every person really needs to have. Marcus, welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Johnny.
Now, we're going to get into a tough period of your life because you've left the National Guard, you've left the war zone, and you're trying to find yourself in a civilian context, which can be very difficult for a veteran, but in your case, you still had a serious neck injury. You had some traumatic things that happened in the war. And when you got back, did you find a job, or how did you deal with that situation?
So when I got back, I had a job waiting on me, and it was at UPS. And obviously, with pinched nerve and chronic migraine, it wasn't going to work out with the neck injury. I tried to do it, and it didn't work out. And then I got 2 other job offers. I took those job offers. One was to return back as a sales distributor for a company, and the other was to do something similar to what I was doing with supplies, to be a logistics clerk. So I took those 2 positions. With the logistics clerk position, I walked out right off the job because I heard a loud boom, and it reminded me of being overseas, and the whole situation just reminded me of being overseas. And at that point, I just, I was kind of getting fed up of being reminded anything overseas related,
Sure.
Because even whenever I heard thank you for your service, I really didn't feel like I deserve it. I didn't feel deserving of it, and I felt very frustrated, with the military in general, and just with everything that was going on. And then the sales distributor job, it didn't work out either because because of my anger issues and just my inability just to connect with people on that deep level, and just just the anxiety that would just build up every time I would begin to get around different crowds of people. So the anxiety and the panic attacks started happening. So I decided just to hang out a bit. And a couple months later, I got very ill while at home. I had a fever, and I was rushed into the emergency room, and they measured my fever at 108.9 degrees.
Holy mackerel.
So I'm sitting, so they was trying to figure out, how was he still conscious with that high spike of fever. They did everything they could to get it down. They even did a spinal tap. They did a spinal tap. They ran all type of tests on me, and they couldn't figure out the source of that fever. Neither can I. So I still to this day, it's one of the highest recorded fevers, at the VA here in Milwaukee.
No kidding. They still don't know what happened to you, right?
Yeah, no knowledge of the source of that fever. And we'll come back to how that changed me as well. So that particular period. But even after that experience, definitely I got the recommendation after that to be medically separated from the military. So I was medically separated from the military once the VA went to full history of what happened to me while I was overseas, with my injury, and they decided that it would probably be best if I separate, and they hooked me up with a social worker as well to address the mental health issues I was having. But I didn't accept the help. I accepted the help for a little while, then I fell off.
Why did you decide not to do that?
There was this inability to be consistent to something. There was still this negativity that, this negative cloud that was over me. And, there was this mistrust, that was still lingering, that I didn't feel like I could trust anyone to help me. I still felt like, I had to do it on my own.
At some point, you had mentioned that during your high school years, you had actually some kind of suicidal thoughts. And now this became amplified, did it not, during this period after you left the National Guard?
Yes, it did. So after during that period as well, suicide thoughts were very present, and they were amplified, especially when losing the job, because of course when you got a loss of income and you don't have any other source of income, you can't pay your bills. So I was heavily wreaked in debt. I was behind on rent, behind on car payments, and I didn't have any money available to me. So I was pretty much living off of outside help, and so there was a lot of shame in that. So the suicide thoughts crept in easily, and then I started developing this gambling addiction. So whenever I would get some money from unemployment, I would take the money down to the local casino here and start spending it. And so I would end up spending the rent money that I had all on the blackjack table. and and walk out. Suicide thoughts come, and I'll sit in the car start thinking of different plans, and but I didn't, before going to the VA, I didn't act. The actions came, after the separation from the military, because once the separation from the military came, I knew then, I couldn't go back if I wanted to. There were some regrets there, about even, the fact that like I had, decided to allow separate from the military, because now I felt like I didn't have anything now, or didn't have any purpose at all. So that lack of purpose was the icing on the cake, so to speak. And those amplified those thoughts, and those thoughts turned into attempts. So my first attempt was, I remember losing a relationship that I had. It was a relationship that I had with someone who I was with while I was deployed, and I can't come to find out she was pregnant by someone else.
Wow.
And that relationship had finally came to a halt, and I got in my car and decided to drive recklessly down the highway, and in hopes of crashing into a wall.
Wow.
What stopped me was seeing the VA hospital. And so when I saw the VA hospital, I pulled in and went into the emergency, and they checked me right in.
That was lucky.
Yeah.
They help you there?
Yeah, they helped me. And then I checked out, but it wasn't very long before, a couple months later, I was back in, because I had another suicide attempt. I was sitting in my vehicle with my 380. I had a 380 pistol. Having, with a girlfriend at the time, things wasn't working out with her because, just with the frustration with myself. And, I took the 380 out. I told her, I said, you don't want to be with someone like me, then, I might as well not be here. The gun, I pointed it at my chest, but the gun was on safety. And then when I laid the gun down on the, so I laid the gun down on the dashboard, and somehow the safety came off, and the bullet ricocheted inside of the vehicle, and it scared the living daylights out of both of us. And so I decided to go right back to the VA after that.
What did your girlfriend think?
Oh yeah, that was it. She immediately cut it off. And that just started like the pattern of just bad relationships.
So one other question I had, is the addiction to gambling, did it go away or at some point, or was that part of your healing?
The gambling addiction stayed up until, I began my healing process, officially began my healing process. It took a long time to overcome the gambling addiction.
Would you say that you were gambling to kind of escape? I mean, that it was something that had a kind of emotional charge to it? Was that the reason? Yeah,
it was definitely an emotional charge. It was whenever I would go down to the casino, the lights, the sounds, the noise, the people, it would give me something similar to what I was getting, when I was overseas. It would give me that excitement, sitting at that blackjack table, not knowing, if I was going to win or lose, that would, building that, having that control to build that anxiety on my own, strangely.
Yeah. We're almost at the end of our program, and I really appreciate you relating these stories for us. But now we are at the cusp of learning about the remarkable healing that occurred in your life and the events that led you to your own personal transformation and your ability to help others on your journey. And of course, this will require another program, but perhaps you could give us a hint as to what triggered the new deep changes in your life.
Outside of the 108.9 degree fever, it was that, but it was also the first birth of my son, when I had to go and be incarcerated, for 4.5 months, while I missed four months of his life. I had time to really be to myself, alone and away from everything that I enjoyed and everything, and something, and more than anything, and that was my son. Something that was given to me, something God had given to me. He took it all away from me and put me alone for me to think and and be with him.
We have to leave now, but in our next show, we will follow Marcus out of the darkness into a transformed human being who ultimately discovers his ability to encourage others on their own journey in his exceptional podcast.
Yes.
This is Johnny Bluestar, CEO of New Galaxy Enterprises. a media content development company. One of the most exciting projects I've regularly been involved in is the creation of nonfiction books, often collaborating with new authors on a wide variety of topics, either through editing or through writing, sometimes being guided by the client's direction or collaborating directly with the client. In this capacity, I've worked on a book on abolishing the caste system in India, a system of selling with integrity and sensitivity towards client and product, several fascinating memoirs, one with a Korean War veteran and crime fighter, and another with one of the greatest ventriloquists and television producers in the 50s and 60s. To learn more about New Galaxy, see samples of our work, or talk to us about your project, please go to www.newgalaxyenterprises.com and fill out the contact form. I think the civil rights movement was a gigantic opening for moral action in the world. It spoke of freedom. Human beings want freedom on an outward level, legal and enforceable equality, but also they want inner freedom. That's an equally big deal. To accomplish either goal, it takes a lot of work. Here's Oh Freedom.
Oh, freedom. Oh, freedom. Oh, freedom over me. And before I be a slave, I'll be buried in my grave and go home to my Lord and be free. Oh, freedom. Oh, freedom, freedom. Oh, freedom. Oh, freedom over me. Over me. And before I be a slave, I'll be buried in my own grave. And go home to my Lord and be free. No more weeping, don't you know? No more weeping. No more weeping over me. And before I be a slave, I'll be buried in my own grave. And go home to my Lord and be free. Oh, freedom. Oh, freedom. Oh, freedom. Oh, freedom. Oh, freedom. Over me. And before I be a slave, I'll be buried in my grave and go home to my Lord and be free. And before I be a slave, I'll be buried in my grave. I'm going home to my Lord and be free.
Thank you for joining us today to take a glimpse into the lives, stories, and processes of men and women whose mission is to effect positive transformation in the individuals that seek their help and for the world that will benefit from that positive transformation. Thank you for joining us again to gain more understanding of the opportunities for all of us, every one of us, to find that higher ground which brings us understanding, safety, and a sense of living a life of real fulfillment and purpose. We go out with a beautiful hymn to the past of a profound human relationship. Here's Barbra Streisand in the title song of the movie, The Way We Were.
scattered pictures of the smiles we left behind, smiles we gave to one another for the way we were. Can it be that it was all so simple then? Or has time rewritten every line? If we had the chance to do it all again, tell me, would we? Could we? Memories may be beautiful and yet what's too painful to remember? We simply choose to forget. So it's the laughter we will remember whenever we remember the way we were. Can it be that it was all so simple then? Or has time rewritten every line? If we had the chance to do it all again, tell me, would we? Could we? Memories may be beautiful and yet what's too painful to remember?